Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. I've always loved pirates. When I was a little kid, I had a uh, playset, a pirate playset with action figures from, I think it was Mattel. They were called the Fighting Furies, and one was Captain Pegleg, who obviously had a peg leg, and the other one was Hook. Uh, and they were little guys, and you could move their arm back and forth. It would have this slashing action and stuff. And it came with this pirate ship playset, which was just typical of the time, where they had a cardboard playset with stairs and like a deck. It was cardboard wrapped in vinyl with a printed on appearance to make it look like a pirate ship. But I had a great time with it. I managed to build things like, getting the cardboard tube from wrapping paper and making a big mast out of it and so forth. Um, but it was a lot of fun, and now I still have the guilty pleasure of liking action figures for that are pirate themed. One of these days, I will actually manage to get myself a Jack Sparrow figure, but it's probably not today, uh, since most of them you have to find them on a secondary market, and they're pretty expensive. But I will get one, or at least put one together. Anyway, so I decided that I will probably have something at some point as I flesh out this collection, some kind of display base, and there weren't very many accessories that you can get for pirate figures. So I figured I got to start building some of these. So I did. Every pirate needs his cannon. So I built this guy here the other day. I got to work on a little bit, like, the ability to aim the cannon. So let's go through how I put this guy together. So the first thing we have to do is to get set up and do our measurements. Okay, so this is about accurate to the brass tube that I'm going to use as my base, because I want to keep this thing not too huge. It should look somewhat proportionate, but not crazy with it. Okay, so my cannon barrel is going to be about 8.5 inches. Now we want to take a look at the little carriage thingy here, whatever the technical name for that is called. And that's going to be about 2.5 inches high and 5.5 inches long. Now, what I'm going to be doing is using this washer for the back of the cannon. It's going to go back here. Okay, so that's my measurement. So this is going to be about 8.5 inches this way, 2.5 this way, and 5.5 this way. Okay, I already have the wooden disc that I'll be using for the wheels. I think I'm going to get some smaller ones for the back, though. I'll pick them up tomorrow. Okay, let's get this started. Okay, we've got our plans. I'll just put them off camera here. We're going to take our piece of brass. Let's see which one I want here. About the same size. Okay, is it copper? I think it's copper. It's copper. Why did I say brass? Because it's late at night, that's why. Okay, so I picked up this little guy at Lowe's. Okay, you go hunting through all the stuff at Lowe's and you can find all kinds of things that will help you with your projects. Or Home Depot, or whatever it is you prefer. Okay, so this is going to be the Canon's barrel, like this. So it's going to be a little bit bigger than 8.5 inches, but it's fine. Okay. Now my original plan, I wanted to attach this washer to the end, but I was having trouble because it's the same size. So I got this guy here. That'll give me a nice flat surface, and I'll put that on like that, and I'll attach it with some JB Weld. So let's get on that. If you've never worked with JB Weld, it's a nice little heavy-duty epoxy, 2-part epoxy, and it's really good for bonding metal together. We're not going to need a whole lot of this. Just kind of eyeball it about how much is about an even amount. Sticky stuff. Okay, take our little popsicle stick and you mix the two together until you get a nice gray, even consistency of the black and white. It does smell pretty funky, so you might want to do this in a nice ventilated area. Okay, so we put a little of this here. Not a whole lot, because remember, this thing fits pretty tight, so it's going to sort of push the epoxy a little bit, but it should hold pretty well. Like that. Okay, we take this guy here and slide him on until we get down to the end. Make sure it can sit flat and flush. Now the stuff that's gotten pushed out here a little bit, that's not really a big deal because it's going to be covered with material. But since I don't want to make a mess and have epoxy everywhere, you want to clean that up a little bit on your barrel like that. Okay, toss that thing there. All right, now we got the washer. Now I want to make sure that the washer is going to fit inside accurately, so I'm going to take a look at this guy here. Yeah, it doesn't fit either. I was hoping that would slide in there. So I'm going to have to eyeball this. Just put a little on the edge here, on the outer edge, because I don't want to get on the inside. Because I'm thinking I might actually want to make this thing able to fire a cannonball with some air pressure, which would be kind of fun. Okay, so I'm just going to eyeball this guy here. Like that. Okay. Now we're going to have to let this sit to cure. And the cure time on this is about 8 hours on this kind of JB Weld. So it's going to take a little bit of time to cure. So once this is done, we will resume our video. Okay, so now my JB Weld is cured, nice and solid on there. Probably wouldn't be hanging off of this on like the super glue commercial, but it'll work. Okay, so now what I have to do is flesh out some of this space so I'm not using a ton of clay. So to do that, we're going to use aluminum foil, unless you're in the UK when it's aluminium foil. Okay, so take this stuff here, kind of do a little of this, So, okay. Now we're going to go here. I'm going to wrap this up. Wrap it up. I'll take it. Wrap it up. I'll take it. Little fabulous Thunderbirds there. Sorry. That's how my brain works. Takes a little cue and runs with it. Okay. Now my idea with this is, what I'm going to do is wrap the clay around this, and I'll use the natural angle as I roll this with the clay on it to get me a nice base around it, so it'll stay nice and even. This would have probably worked out much better with a lathe, but I was trying for something a little bit different. I didn't want necessarily the perfection that the lathe would give me. So I'm going to try this. It might crash and burn, but that's the nature of the business. You get in there and you give it a shot. Sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, but at least you tried. And at the very least, you'll know the next time you try something, you'll know what to do, or at least what not to do, hopefully. You might not use 100% of an idea, you may only use 30% of it, but that learning experience is priceless. Okay, so it's pointless to try and use this plastic wrap to put your Sculpey back in, because it just doesn't work. Get yourself a Ziploc bag and go from there. Now this is regular Sculpey. It's cheap. It's easy to work with. And it can give you a good foundation without a whole lot of cost. If I'm sculpting heads, I'll use Super Sculpey Firm. Super Sculpey Firm runs about $18 a pound, where this stuff here you can pick up at Walmart, and it'll go about $6, I think, for a 1 pound block, which obviously is much cheaper and much more betterer. Okay, so I'm starting off like this, so I just want to get, this is going to go in a couple pieces on here. So I'm going to need to roll it out a little bit. Probably going to shake the camera, sorry. You know what, I'm going to pause this so it doesn't give anybody motion sickness. Okay, a little flatter and less motion sickness for the audience. Kind of wouldn't do very well if you're doing a little tutorial about a pirate ship and I'm actually giving you seasickness from the shaking of the camera. Okay, so we're going to start off like this, push it down this way. Look, I can roll it here. Now, this might be a problem because sometimes you'll feel the foil move around inside. So I may end up having to go full on clay, which, you know, if that happens, that happens. But I'm going to give this a shot and see how we do. Again, we're going to want this, it's going to have that cast iron look to it. So it's going to be, you don't want it to look absolutely perfect. Okay. Once again, pausing for nausea. Okay. Go here, wrap this guy here, tear him there. I think I'll be able to mold this onto here. Yeah, it's got a very kind of flimsy feeling on this. I think I'm probably going to have to ditch that idea and go full on clay. Yeah, the foil is not working. So we're going to do this. Pull this out. Let me just whip this out. Oh well. Now we go here. This. And just start mushing this all around here this way. I'm going to use a lot more clay. Probably have to go get some more, but that's okay. One thing's for sure, I never run out of uses for clay. You can't have too much. Okay. Right. Yeah. All right, all right, all right, all right. Channeling my inner Matthew McConaughey there. Alrighty. Let's take this, wrap them around there. I'm probably going to have to figure out a way to give this a nice. I'm definitely going to have to give it, the cast iron look to it. So that should be pretty interesting. I probably should have gotten two of those little thingies and put one here and a smaller, or just use that little insert piece on the end here. Probably would have given me a nice, steady feel to it. All right. So this is being problematic. Every time I roll it, it moves around inside. The pipe on the inside gets looser. What I may have to do is put a base layer around this and bake it, and then from there, or I might try this. Okay. Oops. Yeah, I think we're going to have to put a base layer on, bake it, and harden that so that this Sculpey has something better to grip to. When I put it on, see it's very loose in there. You see it's the sleeve, it's just not adhering to the metal. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this thing here, this bit here, and I'm going to squeeze this down this far. Try and give myself a nice thin coat, or thinner coat of Sculpey that will adhere to this thing. What I should probably do is get my Dremel and cut some grooves into the metal so that it has something to stick to and adhere to. I think that's the biggest problem, that there's nothing that it's really grabbing on with, and that's why we're having such an issue with the sculpt, the clay sticking to the metal. So every time you move it, especially with regular Sculpey, it gets warm and it gets very flexible and it moves very easily when it's warm. So I think what I probably should do is heat that up. Maybe do some of the little, take my Dremel and carve some lines in there to give it to something to actually adhere to on this base layer. As I'm thinking of it, that's probably going to be the best idea. So we open them up. Skin them. And I'll be back. Okay, so I took a file. I was going to use my Dremel, and I started doing that with some lines, but I didn't feel like it was going deeply enough or making it rough enough. So what I did was took my file, nice heavy metal steel file, and I started digging into the surface of it. And I cross-cut it to give it something to roughen up that surface a little bit. So now I can wrap this around here, like so. Put that on there like so. And I want to get just a thin coat of this. Nowhere near as fat as I want it to be in the end. But I want to get enough on here so that we'll have something to grip to. Look at all the discoloration. That's from the little bits of copper that got all over my hands as I was working on this. The nice thing about this, I don't have to worry about like the clay being discolored, because it's not going to matter in the long run anyway. And I can still use this as I go here. Okay, so this is going to be my base here, like this. Now what I want to do is kind of pull this down this way a little. Okay, and go there. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go pop this guy in the oven and cure this so that I have a nice base that should, as I put the next layer of the clay on there, it should hold on this without like moving all around, and I should be able to roll it and get a nice texture to it, or a nice consistent angle to it rather, without it moving around. I'm wondering, you know what, I'm going to just give this a shot. Let's see if I can't just go right into this and do it all in one shot. See if it moves around too much. Worst case scenario, I just have to peel it off and start over again, which I've already done a couple times, so not a big deal. All right. Okay, let's go here. All right, going to pause so I can roll without shaking everything. I skipped over a couple sections that were sort of redundant. So I finished the sculpting and on the main part of the gun, and that is in the oven curing. So I thought I would start working on the gun carriage. Okay, so I measured out the wood. This guy here, the main plank, is about 5.5 inches long, and the longest ones sit out a little bit farther, so they can kind of steer the gun. And we're going to be using some Gorilla Glue, Gorilla Wood Glue, amazing stuff. Okay. Place this one down here. sure it's nice and flat. The nice thing about this is that it's supposed to look a little rough. Now with Gorilla Glue, you're going to want to clamp it. But I'm going to wait until I get everything in place before I do that. Try not to use too much so that it doesn't shoot out the sides, as much as can be avoided. Go to this part, then I'll show what I did with the wheels. You know, I'm thinking this is probably going to be a little too wide. I think my gun is only going to be about that wide. I'm going to have to trim this down. Okay. Glad I saw that before the glue dried. That would have been a real pain in the ass. You want to have the gun fitting just inside these planks here. Okay. I'm going to mark this here. Now when my gun is out of the oven, I'm going to double check my measurement before I cut it. Measure twice, cut once. Okay, so what I did here, I took two of these discs. I found these at Hobby Lobby, this wood pile stuff, and I took these, and they weren't quite wide enough. They looked a little wimpy, so I glued two of them together, and I'll probably put some wood putty in the middle so it makes it look a little bit better. And the smaller ones, these were cut thinner, so I put four of these together. Now they're the same distance. And I'll do the same thing with some wood putty in here. I'll drill through and make the axles. We're going to have to take this thing and figure out how wide this is going to be once I pull my gun out of the oven, measure it out, set it inside here. And these two pieces here, I'm saving for the end because this is where it's going to support the gun itself. So I'll actually be cutting a small circle, like half circle in there, so that it can fit into the, there's like an axle that sits in the gun itself. So I definitely was a little too wide. I'm glad I caught that before I put this together. I would have been highly upset. Highly upset. Take a look at the gun so far and show you what else has to happen to it before I get it set to go. All right, I'm going to let this thing clamp. Right about there. Turn it in a little bit. There we go. I will hold that one in place. Make sure it's straight. Shift it a little bit, but it should be okay. And same thing to the other one. There we go. Okay, we'll set this guy up for a little while. We're going to take a look at the gun. All right, we're going to have to put there are some raised lines that will have to go. There's going to be one here, one, let's see, double check my photos. Okay, two. So I'll need one an equal distance from the midpoint, about there. One here. And there's two up here where a rope goes around. Okay. So I'll have to set that up like that. Canon sculpture anyway. Then I made a mold. Put a little charcoal mica powder in here. There's my casting. It's nice and rough and beat up. Here is the gun carriage. This guy here. So I just have to put a little thingy on the top to lock that in place. Staple, some stain, and some cord around it to finish up the look. Finished Canon. I stained the wood, did a little bit of touching up with paint, and I'm thinking I'm going to get a thicker rope to put on there so it looks a little bit more scale accurate. But not bad for a little weekend job. I do have to cut down a little bit in here so that the Canon sits a little straighter, because it's off a little bit. But just about like maybe a 1/16 of an inch shaving off in there will fix it. But there we go. Now my pirate figures have an accessory. Thanks for watching. So that's it. That's how I did my Canon. From the original sculpture to the gun carriage and Yeah, some of the stuff I really didn't include there. It's not that important, like the staining process and so forth. It's pretty straightforward. Uh, some drilling, some little cutting the wood and gluing it together. Some gorilla wood glue, I should say. Um, casting resin, the mica powder that goes into the resin to give it this like nice cast iron look. And one thing I will say though, I probably should have locked the wheels in place uh, because if I put it down, it will slide and roll the other way. I guess I need a braking mechanism on it. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and share. Have a great day.